Hello, this is Jared Morris with Parsi, here to show you a unique configuration that has to do with updating Infusionsoft records when you don't have an email address. Now, by default, Parsi, when you're configuring your actions, I'll dive into one here. It provides a few different options, and we've actually considered building a few more out. But what you'll see is by default, it's always going to default to email address, which is really the preferred method. The second option is to not check for duplicates at all, but always add a new contact. There are some rare instances in which that one might be a fit for you. And the third, of course, is to use a provided Infusionsoft contact ID. Now, to frame this situation a little bit better for you, this particular user is using Time Matters, which is a software platform for attorneys. And in this particular case, there are oftentimes platform isn't as important as the actual usage. So what happens is a lot of times their prospects or customers do not have an email address, frankly do not have one. That it does still happen these days. Or if they do have one, for whatever reason, they've chosen to withhold it and they'd rather not provide that piece of information. This presents a real problem. When we're trying to automate the initial creation of a contact inside Infusionsoft, if we cannot check against email and we also don't have an Infusionsoft contact ID stored in the third-party platform, this case Time Matters, there's nothing for us to check against. Now, Time Matters does have a unique ID address, and many other software platforms obviously run off of IDs. And so we're going to see if we can pass an ID into the email address, since we don't have and won't have an email for this person, so that we can use it to identify, is there an existing contact? If so, update it with this new information. Or if there is not an existing contact, create a new one. So what I've done is I've come in here and we'll look at first the way that I'm getting the data. So I'll click on Edit. And I've done a very simple example here, but I'm grabbing the first name, the email, and the phone number. So many other lead sources will have more data points than this, but just wanted you to see that I am grabbing all of it. Now, when I configure the actions, returning to our actions page, I am going to dupe check with the email. And I'm not doing any other Infusionsoft events or anything at this time, just seeing if it successfully creates the contact. Now, if I go back to email parsers and I come down to the inbox, for the sake of time, I've sent some emails so that we could save some time here. So if I jump over into Infusionsoft, you can see that I recently did a search for Joe. As you can see, there's not a Joe at joe.com inside of our sister system, nor is there a Betty. So I've deleted Betty out. So we'll return to Parsi, and I'm just going to open up this first one, and I'm going to say reprocess email and confirm that I want to do that. So it's added it to the queue, which the queue usually runs within a second or two. And I'll just hit back to inbox. I'll jump over to Infusionsoft and do a search for Joe at joe.com. Could also do a search for Joe, but I know that's the email address that I used. And there's Joe. And it contains the three pieces of information we had: Joe, 555 as the number, and his email address. Okay, so that's great. Now, we know that Parsi already does that successfully, but what about passing an ID into Infusionsoft? So I'll open up this second test here, where we didn't have an email address, but we had a unique ID provided by a third-party software that we're passing into Infusionsoft. So I'll reprocess this email, and you'll see that it's added to the queue as well. So that's great. I'll return to Infusionsoft. Joe's looks good. We'll come over here and do a search now for Betty. And I can either search with her first name here, or I could go to View Contacts and search the 12345 for her email address. Okay, so Betty is created inside Infusionsoft. And we sure have the ID stored successfully in the email field. So creating a new contact was no problem at all. Her phone number, again, 555, and so on. Now, what about the update feature? Will it work when it's not an email address, doesn't contain a @.com or @.net or .org or whatever it may be, but it's just a five digit unique ID? Let's check it out. So I'll go to this third test here, which again is first name Betty, email must match for it to update. So we're passing from our third-party system that same unique ID from our third-party system, but I've got an updated phone number here. So let me reprocess this email, and we'll hit yes. It's been added to the queue. So what should happen when we bounce over to Infusionsoft is that we should be able to search for Betty, or in this case I have the record up, I can refresh, and I should see an updated phone number. But instead of refreshing, I am going to search for Betty so that you can see whether or not a second contact named Betty is created. Let's do that. Just one Betty, and if we look at her phone number there, it has been updated. If your business is ever in a situation where you're not able to collect email address, but you do have some unique serial that you know will be for one person and one person only, you most definitely can pass that value to the email field and know that when updating it in the future, it will successfully recognize it as an already existing contact. That's it for today. Remember, you can always find us at docs.parsi.com, where we have a knowledge base of articles and videos. And you can also drop us a line if you need help at support@parsi.com. Thanks so much.